Do you guys
Uh,
think it's weird to drink instant coffee with cold tap water and just that?
Not weird, no.
Oh, okay, cool.
I don't think
Everyone,
it's
everyone
weird.
thinks I'm crazy because I do that. It's
I
just
think
like
it's a
so easy
little
though.
it's a little weird to do it on the Starbucks episode, but
Yeah, that is true. Actually, we should have all got Starbucks. How did we not think about that? Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of AI FYI, your go-to podcast for all things AI and learning about new topics, new things, what's going on in AI, and everything in terms that we can all understand. Today, we've got a pretty exciting episode, something that I was actually surprised to really hear about. But we're going to be talking about Starbucks, and we're going to talk about how Starbucks is using AI to build the next generation of what we all know and love to be our favorite coffee spot. So, Joe, why don't you take it away and tell us, what is Starbucks?
yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to talk about this topic, and I was very surprised to hear. I think we all were kind of shocked at how much Starbucks uses AI. But here's sort of the, except for Andy. So here's the overview of Starbucks, which if you are living on planet Earth, you probably know about Starbucks. But if you don't, it is the premier roaster and retailer of specialty coffee um, in the whole world. That's what Starbucks says. It was founded in 1971 in Seattle, and you can actually go to their first store, which I've been to. And today, and a lot of these stats that I'm going to share are very fresh. They're from the beginning of 2024. They have there were a couple counts, but like 32 to 35,000 stores worldwide. So since 1971, that growth is pretty insane. About 16,000, a little bit more than that, of those stores are in the United States. And I just saw a lot about how they're trying to expand internationally and particularly in China. So as of this time, there's about 6,800 stores in China, and that's scattered across 800 different cities. And I was like, whoa, there's 800 cities in China? That's crazy. Um, so, yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about their digital platform. So, just to touch on that, as you may know, they have a pretty robust rewards loyalty program. This is contributing to a lot of their business. And just a little bit about how that works is it allows you to pay through the app and then get reward points, which they call stars. And then you can redeem those stars for free food and drinks. And so, as of this year, there's a record 34.3 million active users in that rewards program, and membership is up 13% from the same time last year. So a lot of growth there, and obviously something they're going to keep, investing in. Like I said, a big part of this platform is like mobile payments, and apparently these pay capabilities were used for more than 30% of all purchases. And it seems that if you're a part of the rewards program, you're coming into stores a lot more often, more frequently, and spending more time in there. So that's the overview. Just a couple, like I said, they're really investing in this platform, certainly in AI, which we're going to get into, and growing internationally. I also saw a lot on how they're trying to invest more in like worker well-being and worker pay. That's something I read on their website, so who knows what that means. But often when we've heard about Starbucks in the news in the past couple of years, it's been about how they treat their employees and employees unionizing and that sort of thing. And so let's talk. Let's get into the AI of it. And Andy's going to be driving this conversation. She's done a lot of research. So Andy, take it away.
Well, actually, before that, I'm
Yeah.
curious, do either of you guys use the Starbucks app?
So I'm one of the people who's kind of trying to boycott Starbucks because of the union busting they're doing. I will be going to Starbucks that have unionized if I can. But
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
otherwise, I will go to another coffee vendor.
How do you know if a Starbucks has unionized?
You can ask the employees.
Oh, that's cool.
But I think there's also a Starbucks Union National. I think on their website they show details of which stores have done their votes, how it went. Of course, Starbucks has shut down stores that have unionized. So
I
that's
heard
not great.
someone told me yesterday that Mickey, who's getting a lot of
Mm.
shout outs on this podcast, told me that they're actually going to have to reopen a couple stores in San Francisco because they were accused of closing those stores to prevent or like bust the union that had formed there. And so I guess the law is saying you have to reopen those.
Yeah, you can't just stop union efforts. That's called union busting, and it's illegal.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, drama.
So I was the one that pushed the boys into doing an episode on Starbucks, and when I first pitched it, both of them were like, "Eh," but I nagged them into it, and it's for a couple of reasons. One, juicy, juicy Starbucks drama and capitalism drama. Obviously, I want to talk about it. Yeah. Two, uh, it's actually just another stealth episode about agriculture. I tricked you. I got a whole bunch of stuff about crops to talk about.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And three, I think Starbucks is just like a really relatable household brand. And probably every single person who's listening to this podcast has gone to a Starbucks at least 5 times in their life. Uh, and it'll be really interesting, I think, for folks to realize how from the very ground that the coffee bean grows to, all the way to your transaction at point of sale, there's AI every step of the way. And there's investments in AI happening every step of the way. I think it's a really interesting story of how AI is changing the world. So that was my motivation for talking about Starbucks. That and the SEO of if people type Starbucks into podcasts, maybe will pop up.
It's probably a topic that a lot of people can relate to. They're everywhere.
Exactly. So yeah, stop me when you guys have questions because I went down the deep end researching stuff about coffee, and I'm sure I have way too much to talk about. But first and foremost, little thing I learned this morning. Guess who's on the board of Starbucks?
Hmm.
Elon Musk.
Satya Nadella.
Oh, no way.
Really?
Yeah. So for
Interesting.
those who don't know, Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. He certainly knows a lot about AI. He was the CEO of Microsoft who did the partnership between Azure and OpenAI, and he's been on the board of Starbucks since 2017.
Wow.
Oh, they're schmoozing
Star,
up there in Seattle.
yeah. Um, Starbucks started publicly talking about their machine learning platform called Deep Brew
Very clever.
around 2017, and it's built on Azure ML.
Oh.
So
Get
that's
those
that
billion-dollar
connection.
contracts.
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you who are not in the tech world, the reason we're going, wow, ooh, is that Microsoft kind of lost some ground in market dominance in the early 2000s. People stopped always using Windows OS and Microsoft Word and things like that. And they're actually making up a lot of ground right now in the AI world, right? Their platform, Azure, is a competitor to things like AWS and GCP. If you don't know what those acronyms mean, don't worry. Just know that tech companies buy services from Microsoft to run their cloud infrastructure. And Azure Microsoft has a really strong partnership with the leading name in generative AI, OpenAI. So the fact that the CEO of Microsoft is on the board of directors of Starbucks, Starbucks has a machine learning platform. I'll explain what those are in a second, built on top of Azure. It's a very circular thing. They all know each other.
And
And
all
like
the
a quick demystification for cloud computing, it's basically like
Yeah.
a bunch of computers sitting in a building somewhere, and those computers are extremely powerful computers. And when you are connecting to the cloud, which is most of the websites, if not all of the websites that you're using, you're sending tasks to that center to say, send me this web page or do this calculation, and then it does it on the computer and it just sends you the result so you can see it. So your laptop doesn't fry itself because it's trying to do a whole bunch of math. It's just sent somewhere else. do the calculation, the heavy, expensive stuff, and then send it back. So cloud computing in a nutshell.
And we've talked about like data storage and then also the compute needed to train some of these massive models. That all can be happening through those cloud services as well.
So on Starbucks's board is at least one person, probably more than one, that know a whole bunch about AI and what AI can do. So when I started laying out my notes for this, I have a section on just how coffee growing is being impacted by AI, which is pretty interesting, but it's hard to figure out how much of that Starbucks is directly involved in. And then I have what Starbucks admits to doing and what I found tech talks and slides on, and then I have my own guesses on the direction that Starbucks is going. So we can get into it in that order, I think, maybe following from tree and soil all the way through to when you buy your cup of coffee.
It sounds great. And I love the
Yeah.
hypothesizing too. I think that's always a big part of this.
And I love how you slid agriculture in this episode.
Always and forever. I am an agriculture stan. Okay, so did you guys know that most people who grow chocolate beans have never had chocolate?
No.
Whoa. Interesting.
Once the cocoa bean gets pulled off the tree, it takes so much processing to turn it into chocolate, and it's so expensive. Most chocolate growers have never had the opportunity to taste the output of their own agriculture.
That makes me so sad.
It's deeply sad. You can actually go on YouTube and type in chocolate grower tasting chocolate for the first time. There are people who go and bring Hershey's to the chocolate farms and let people taste what they're growing, and it's really heartbreaking and interesting to watch.
Hershey's
It's
is chocolate?
Yeah. No, barely. Not legally, but barely.
It's milk and sugar and food.
Yeah.
News to me.
So I'm not sure. I did not find as much of the similar story on coffee, but just a little bit of context. The coffee plant, I believe, comes from the Eastern Hemisphere, and it is a cash crop. Coffee is second to tea in the most consumed beverage on Earth. I believe it goes water, tea, coffee, beer, wine.
Wow.
But economically, coffee commands a larger price point. I believe it's a larger market cap for coffee than any other beverage on Earth. And it's a cash crop, which means that there are farmers all around the equator in a lot of places around the Earth, South America and Africa specifically, but certain islands as well, who grow coffee. And for the most part, it's this weird thing where a lot of coffee is grown actually by still relatively small farms. The beans are taken off the tree, and it's like a little cherry. It's a little red dot thing, and there's a bean inside that has to be dried. Then you have to remove the husk from the bean. The beans are brought into centers where they're weighed and a quality score is assigned. The farmer is paid for them, and they're taken off to subsequent processing, which can include drying, fermentation. Obviously, they're usually imported to other countries raw, roasted on site. Like Starbucks roasts their own coffee, right? And then brewed.
So when Starbucks gets those beans, they've already gone through all that processing and all they're doing is roasting them? Or do they also do some of those other steps in the processing?
I was not able to get a definitive answer on Starbucks's bean supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
I do happen to have a friend who I will not dox on this stuff. He works at a company that when beans are imported en masse in bulk to the United States, a lot of them go through the port of San Francisco and Oakland. And companies like Starbucks and Pete's hire a third-party sampling group to like test the quality of the beans, test the caffeine. It can be of wide variety, and then decide which batches they're going to buy from the bean aggregators. So I know at least part of their coffee supply chain is buying it. The point of sale to Starbucks is in the United States at these ports.
Got it. And then I'm curious, what is the volume that we're talking about here, like daily, monthly, from a farm?
Um, I can't reach. I'm in my brother's house and I literally can't reach my keyboard, so maybe somebody can Google it, but it's tons and tons and tons of coffee. Starbucks, I believe, is the largest. Well, Nestle's probably the biggest seller of coffee, but Starbucks is probably the largest coffee chain.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of, yeah, at that scale with so many stores and so many consumers, they must have like a massive mix of different beans coming from all over the place, which, yeah, makes you wonder, how you maintain a consistent Starbucks flavor when you have such a variety of beans, I'm assuming.
Okay, so I
Oh,
looked it up. The
hmm
Just like the immediate Google answer. Guess how
hmm
many pounds of coffee beans per year are consumed?
I'm gonna say it's in the hundreds of. No, it might be in the billions, not in the trillions.
10 billion pounds of coffee beans are harvested per year,
Wow.
providing more than 25 million jobs. Again, that's just like the first immediate thing. So, but 10 billion pounds of coffee beans.
25 million jobs. That's 25 million people
Yeah,
involved in the coffee bean
crazy.
industry.
That is crazy.
So there's a lot of, it's a really complicated multi-step supply chain, right? Like coffee beans, which I believe originated in Africa, were brought to Brazil and South America, along with human beings from Africa, thanks Columbian exchange, grown en masse. A lot of coffee farmers, their job is to grow as many beans as possible, and then they sell the beans to their local coffee bean aggregator, and they make a very small amount of money on that. That person takes all the beans from a set of farms and takes it to another like center where they're again a larger batch just concentrated, and then so on and so forth until they arrive at like a massive Starbucks processing center. Um, and Starbucks is a premium coffee globally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Nestle, Folgers, there's a lot of like gradation in coffee. Obviously, you have your high-end fourth and fifth wave coffee shops that like work with direct with farmer, source their own beans, do everything supply chain control themselves, and they do low volume, high quality production. But for the amount of coffee that Starbucks sells, they their quality of coffee is just it is at a different level than like most of the Nestle brands.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Um, Nestle's Nespresso line is probably the same quality level of like fanciness, but most of Nestle's coffee is also sold as like instant. They have vending machines, they've got coffee pods, they got diffusion brands, etc.
Do
Yeah,
you
when
have
you
a
go to Asia, it's like mostly Nespresso
uh,
or Nestle coffees that you get. Uh,
Hmm
do,
yeah.
do you have a sense of like what makes one coffee better than another? Is it just like the amount of flavor or like
Yeah, so
the taste?
interestingly enough, I've read about AI that was used in lots of beverages for quality control. I think there's an episode we could do about AI and beer, actually. That's really interesting. But uh, when you make beverage out of any plant, whether it be tea, wine, coffee, you can taste what happened at the farm. Our palates are refined enough that slight changes in tannins and acids and sweetness and bitterness can be detectable. And sometimes, no matter what the farmer does, you can't control the weather, right? So, what quality of beans you can produce year over year can change, and it's subjective. Somebody might like more acidic, somebody might like more sweet. So, um, imagine you are selling your beans at a local aggregator. What that person looks at your beans, and they have to guess how good these beans are going to taste. You can get paid a different amount based off what that person thinks,
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that who that person is might be different depending on what day you show up.
Oh wow. Yeah, it was actually interesting. So, slight tangent, but I did a coffee tasting class, like 2 hour class, whatever, in Mexico City when I was there. And I was like, oh, we're gonna show up and just like drink a whole bunch of coffees. But the first like chunk, like most of the class was actually just understanding tastes. So there's a, I guess they've quantified all the tastes that we can taste, but there's like 60 or 80 or some like some double digit number of different flavors and these flavors are like tar or wood or jasmine or orange. So it's like very much tied to like nature and like the flavors and scents that we're getting from nature. And that's how we've quantified it. Cause I think for me, that's something that's really interesting. I've thought about is like, we haven't digitized flavor. We've digitized
Actually,
color and sound. Okay, well, maybe we'll change. But that's, yeah, it was like interesting to just see like how we map flavors to like the real world. And there's no like it's like 26 flavor. It's like no, it's like peach or jasmine. So that was cool.
so another tangent. I really like boozing. I like wine. So when like a sommelier tastes, like they look at a white wine and they smell it and they go, "Oh, green apple." What they're picking up on is actually a particular chemical compound that is in the plant green apple. Like you can do
Mm,
spectrometry on it,
hmm.
right, for people with fine
Yeah.
palates, and they're picking up on the exact same chain of like whatever acids or proteins or whatever they're smelling. Um, and it's the same chemical chain
Oh
uh,
wow.
in the two things, right? So when you're saying these tastes, these are the actual chemicals that people with refined palates can pick up.
Got it. So
We just
green apple is like
associate
the
it,
layman term for like that chemical.
yeah.
And
And
I'm
like green
guessing,
apples have a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess this is maybe where some of the AI comes in with detection and like a very defined like thing
Yeah.
that a machine might look for.
Yeah.
We're not there yet though.
Okay.
Imagine. Imagine you're a coffee farmer. Odds are you are in an impacted, poor economy around the world. You're probably doing subsistence level agriculture or slightly above. Um, and you're getting pennies to the dollar's worth of what your labor is providing. Um, and coffee plants are fussy, actually. They are prone, first of all, you have to, if you're going to make money, you have to kind of monocrop them. So, which means often you're clearing forests to try and give your coffee beans a good run. Um, and there's diseases that can impact these coffee beans. And one disease spreading 1 year can tank a farm.
Wow.
And if you think about, for example, people in South America who might be the descendants of enslaved people, it's not like they have 200 generations worth of history with this crop, the way that like wine growers in Turkey would. It's people who are growing this crop because they know that they will be able to sell it no matter what. And they don't necessarily understand always, like, they don't necessarily always have the context of how they change the terroir, how it impacts the coffee bean. Of course, they can drink coffee, but like, and they do, but it's not as direct of a relationship. So, one of the ways that people are deploying machine learning is to help coffee growers. For example, one of the two species of coffee, there's Arabica and Robusta. You guys have heard of those terms? Those are
Hmm.
two different species of this tree that
Hmm.
grows a fruit. The fruit has a bean. The bean is the coffee.
And those are the only two? Or are there other there are like many species or
I believe those are the only two we drink. I don't know if there's others that exist.
Hmm.
oh wow. Okay.
So, Robusta coffee, Coffea canephora, is actually susceptible to a lot of diseases, insects, fungi, and if you can't identify them quickly and treat them, uh, it can reduce your yield, which reduces your profits, and then it can actually destroy your trees. But these trees, once planted, they take like 3 to 7 years to actually start growing beans. So it's already an investment, a risk that you're taking to plant the trees, right? And I spent way too long yesterday looking at pictures of coffee leaves. And one was sick with an illness called rust, and one wasn't. It is not clear to the eye which one was the sick plant.
Hmm.
So there's a whole bunch of groups, including a group out of the Federal University of Lavras in Brazil, who make something called Coffee App. I'm going to quote from what they describe. We attempted to develop an AI-based handy mobile application which would not only efficiently predict harvest time, estimate coffee yield and quality, but also inform about plant health.
Nice.
Multiple features of analyzing fruit from the image taken by phone camera with in-field can thus track fruit ripening in real time.
It's interesting to me that it's a mobile app, but this is probably for use by very small farmers. Like I'd imagine you'd want like a drone that flies over the field, but obviously that's going to be an investment.
The people from that group, I don't know if they're associated with it. There's the group in making coffee app at the Federal University of Lavras, and then there's an app called Demetria, which is an AI mobile app for coffee growers. I can't tell if there's any relationship between these groups. They're both based out of Brazil, and they're trying to service individual farmers. Phones are widely prevalent all over the world in AI connection and internet connection.
Mhm.
Again, we're using cloud computing to do AI, so these farmers can be like, is what I'm looking at early stages of rust disease? Snap a picture and get back a really accurate prediction, actually, of whether or not there's spider mites or rust on the plant, which are really common illnesses. A paper was released January 11th, so what, 20 days ago,
Hmm.
that uh, made some of these models much more accurate and smaller, which is really cool. I'll explain what that means. I'm going to go a little bit too technical for a second. Then I'm going to ask Joe and Kieran to play it back demystified. Okay. Originally, the data set for rust and spider mite detection came from a very particular data set that was really unbalanced. And people trying to train classification models were having quality problems. Somebody figured out how to use GAN to supplement and balance the data set. And then they trained a transformer, and a really small transformer performed super, super well.
Oh, nice.
Who would like to translate for the audience?
Yeah. So essentially, what Andy is saying is unbalanced data set. So here they're probably looking for a bunch of pictures of healthy plants and a bunch of pictures of unhealthy plants. My guess is the unhealthy plants, they probably didn't have enough samples because that sounds harder to collect. And so using GANs, you can actually generate more examples of that unhealthy plant. And when you're generating, it's called synthetic data. Go check out our training data episode, which isn't up right now, but we'll put it up at some point when we re-record it. Synthetic data is basically creating, fake versions that are very similar to that type of data that you're looking for. So in this case, they might create a whole bunch of fake images of, ill plants to supplement the data set so that when they're training the model, they have enough examples of healthy and unhealthy plants. Because if you do too much of one, then the model will only learn like healthy plants and it'll be really bad at detecting unhealthy or vice versa. So that's what, GAN synthetic generation is used for, to help improve the quality of models. Transformer is a component in a model. It's just a way of building, an AI model. We don't need to get into the details of that. And then when we talk about bigger or smaller models, generally we'll talk about the number of nodes in that model. So again, slight tangent, but an LLM uses billions of these nodes, but you can imagine billions of anything is a lot. And when we talk about compute and cost, means very expensive to run and operate. And so, a lot of, once we've built these like really big models that perform well, the next phase of optimization is like, how can we get the same accuracy out of a much smaller model, which is super cheap? And eventually, some models that we have are actually running on the phone. So now it's not running in the cloud, it's running on your phone, which means it's going to give you results a lot faster because you don't have to go talk to the internet and come back. It can just like, do your facial recognition on your phone itself. Uh, Slight tangent, but that's, essentially what Andy's saying when we're
Mhm.
talking about, trying to supplement these data sets and improve the accuracy of those models.
We alluded to this before, but getting the model so small that it can be accessed on the phone is so important, because if it's something that can only run at a high cost on like big machines, it's not going to make it to the people in the same way that it can if it's on a mobile phone with your basic internet connection. So that's great for these farmers.
Yeah, so the big transformer model was overfit, had a tendency to overfit. All that means is that its data was not as accurate when it would make predictions. But yeah, these folks published a paper and they're building off work. There's a big body of work of identifying this. And what I love about this application of AI is that the consumer of the model is not Starbucks. It's the farmers whose work feeds into Starbucks. And they're trying to give them tools to make more money, grow healthier plants. And agriculture can get really complicated. If you can give people cheap mobile apps that help them uh, do less harm on earth but grow better crops, that's a win. There's a completely other group doing the exact same problem with a different type of model from a different point of view. Ready for it? So, came across an article that said some group out of a university in the UK, the Imperial College of London, had partnered, an agriculture and an astronomer had partnered together. And I was like, what does the astronomer have to do with anything? If you remember our episode from AI in space, which I don't even know if we've posted that one yet either.
It's coming.
Sorry, guys.
It's coming. So they were able to train, they have very high precision satellite images of crops, and they were trying to detect rust and some other illnesses from space, from satellites.
Whoa.
It worked, not great, but fine. And now they're modifying that computer vision algorithm to run, just like Joe suggested, on drones. And they actually have test deployed these drones in Chiang Rai, northern province of Thailand, for coffee farmers there. So pros and cons, there are things you can see from the top view down on top of the trees that you can't see if you are a farmer on the ground or a person on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be used in conjunction with the handheld phone's close-up picture of a leaf. But obviously it's a larger investment to get drone monitoring of any kind of farm. So this is just a pilot program that they've been running. We'll put in the show notes a link to the interview with those folks, but I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of investment being made in AI to help the farmers grow and get the full value of their beans. I think that's cool.
Wow.
That's really neat.
Awesome.
Yeah, particularly.
We haven't even got to Starbucks yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but when we worked at Figure 8, one of our clients actually, we did one of the first applications of our semantic segmentation tool that we were working on. Side note, semantic segmentation just means you're painting on an image, like color coding it, like paint by number, so that you can train an algorithm. Was a paper plate. It was an aerial view of a paper plate with a bunch of semi-wet beans on top. And we were counting how many beans and grading the quality of the bean with the semantic segmentation so that somebody could make a quality control algorithm for the beans. That was at the point of sale from the farmer to the bean aggregator, so that they could more fairly and evenly across different geographies price, grade, and value beans.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that, it sounds like that's something that could take the subjectivity out of bean quality, which I don't know, yeah, could help for more consistent pricing and like quality.
Yeah, I also mentioned there's like probably a fair amount of corruption when we're talking about things coming from, unregulated countries and mass amounts of money being exchanged. Definitely some sort of corruption and schmoozing and nepotism here, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And will the AI solve that? Well, it depends how it's deployed, right? Like you could just as easily make an objective quality control algorithm that just tells everybody their beans are shit and here's 2 cents, when in actuality, human might have said, these beans are great, here's 20 cents a pound. There's going to be corruption, whether there's AI there or not, but it's one tool in the toolkit to try and give like Starbucks's corporate governance, the 6 ethical people left at Starbucks who try, they might be able to influence via the AI consistent payment to farmers.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see how something like that handles, like, the range of quality. Like you might have 2 different models, one that predicts quality for more, like good quality if it's more acidic, or one that's like better at predicting the sweetness when quality is assessed on sweetness. Or is it just like one model across the whole globe that everyone's using to say this is a good bean or not a good bean. There's room to grow here.
Yeah. So enough about agriculture. I've taken up more than my time. Let's talk about making coffee. So the beans get brought in, and then in the case of Starbucks, I don't know exactly where Starbucks roasts all their coffee beans, but as I understand it, very few of them are roasted at the um, coffee shops. They have like regional coffee roasting centers where they're roasted en masse and then sent out to the different coffee shops.
They must smell so
Um,
good, those centers.
oh, yeah. If you've ever been in a coffee shop that roasts their own coffee, it's delicious. Try to find one in
Cyclass
your
does
neighborhood.
that in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, and it smells
Cyclass,
great
and
in
you can
there.
see them like there's a big barrel and there's like little like paddles turning the beans. It's cool. It smells really good.
So I was born in a small third world poor country that at the time was called Yugoslavia. Uh, and even recently, my parents just moved back. My mom just texted me a picture. You can buy raw coffee in a store there because it's cheaper. And then you used to have, fireplaces, this kind of like old-timey thing, and you'd have a hole in the back of your fireplace, and you could like put this metal rod that has this round barrel-looking mini thing on it and a handle, and you could quickly fire roast your own beans to order.
Oh my
Um,
god,
yeah,
sounds so good.
Yeah, I want a
and
nice cup of coffee now.
yeah, you can also there's lots of different ways you could mess around home roasting coffee, but most people just get local roasted beans, or you can get roasted beans at Costco. You'll see them vacuum packed, etc. And roasting is currently an art, not a science. So think of this as like when you're making whiskey, there's a master distiller who like uses a wooden bead to knock on the still and say, now the whiskey mash is ready. When you're making wine, you've got a master vintner or winemaker who is like, now the mash is ready, or I'm going to blend exactly like this. Same situation with coffee. Coffee roasting is a skilled practice because depending on the batch size that you're roasting a small family size amount of coffee, very different than roasting in a commercial big factory setup an amount of coffee for distributing like the Starbucks bags to Costco, for example. Somebody is watching heat be applied to the coffee bean and then deciding this is like right level of roast. It matters because you get different tastes from different roast levels. And to achieve the roast level is not just you're looking for color of a certain kind, but it has to do with like how fast the bean got to that color. So was it high heat, short time, heat, medium duration? You can still get to the same outcome, but that heat application changes the chemicals in the bean and changes the final cup of coffee. So again, you can roast coffee and then be like, oh, this roast went well or this went poorly, and then decide how you brand and market it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys remember this from our days at Figure Eight, but we actually worked with a dog food company who would just make dog food, then use the same semantic segmentation tool we used for the coffee beans to count how much meat, vegetables, and gravy it ended up making. And then after they made the dog food, would decide whether this was their premium brand, mid-tier brand, or budget brand.
Oh wow.
I remember this.
Yeah.
It was
So
very
it's
strange to go through and essentially coloring book chunks of meat.
and it's weird to think that they don't set out to make a particular recipe, but rather they kind of wing it and then they figure out how they're going to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that with
Oh, I just wanted to say in that use case, like that was labeling the data to train a machine to go ahead and do the detection on its own. The plan wasn't for it to always be a human process of humans assessing like that ratio.
yeah. So there was a paper from June 2022 titled Coffee Roast Intelligence. I don't know. I didn't see this paper published in any journal. I just found it on Archive. And I couldn't even read the entire paper on Archive because the link was broken. So I don't know how true this is. But at least one group was working on an Android app that identifies the color of coffee beans by photographing or live streaming the video of the roast um, to an upload server. The application displays text showing what level the coffee beans have been roasted, as well as informs the percentage chance of class prediction to the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what you can imagine is you can hold up your phone looking at the vat where the coffee is roasting, and in real time, you're seeing little boxes probably following individual beans around, and then it'll say like dark roast, 80% confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we're gonna see a Twitch live stream of this one day.
Maybe. I
It's
hope
gonna
so.
have billions of views.
I think that
So,
color detection could be complex too, because like in that case, the lighting, you know, could be different based on where that app is used. So
Mhm.
you would have to account for that and how you train the detection, or even like the background of like the machine that's doing the roasting.
Yeah, if it's like a light colored barrel or a dark colored barrel.
Yeah, could be hard to get right.
um, and to be honest, I thought that reason that paper was the only one I could find is because it's kind of a nonsense toy idea. What's actually happening in these commercial coffee roasting applications is they're roasting thousands of pounds of bean at a time, and they have everything instrumented, and they're measuring chemicals that are being off-gassed, the heat, the sound. They have microphones in these, you
Wow.
know, things, and they're putting tons of data from these sensors into a computer that's showing this to a master roaster, and they're using older types of machine learning called regressions to do much more sophisticated prediction work actually. Doing this fancy computer vision deep learning stuff from your phone is not, it's for home application most
Mhm.
likely. On the commercial side, they're doing much larger scale data collection, much more fine grained, and they're doing chemistry essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
You would need
I
to. All those beans passing through, there's just no way.
exactly.
Yeah.
I did not have the time to go deep in finding how Starbucks does the AI on this stage. Um, Maybe it's because I just ran out of time on researching, but I'm guaranteed they're collecting a volume of data from all their coffee roasting centers that would let them train models, try to reproduce certain effects. There's no way they're not doing that.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um, so that brings me to Deep Brew. Does one of you guys want to explain why the name Deep Brew is a really funny name for Starbucks's machine learning platform?
Well, I I mean, things that come to mind is like Google's big AI wing is called DeepMind, I believe. Um,
Mhm.
and then obviously brew coffee. I'm just wondering if there was a little like play on words from those two
Yeah.
ideas.
So I think there's that, and then the other one is these machine learning models are called deep neural networks. The only reason why they're called deep neural networks is because you have more than two layers of neurons. So there's like an input layer, a bunch of hidden layers, and then an output layer. And so they call it deep because there's many layers. Um, yeah.
So Deep Blue is also a famous chess computer. It was one of the first supercomputer AI systems. It was released in 1995 as a prototype by IBM. It was a famous AI for playing chess. It's called Deep Blue.
Mhm.
So Deep Brew,
Uh,
Yeah. And
I
that's the
thought
one
that was
that
where my
Gary
memory.
Kasparov played against, right? It was Deep Blue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
it
So
speaks to maybe the awareness Starbucks has about like AI as an industry, and that it wasn't just like a, I don't know, a random selection. Maybe, who knows?
Satya
yeah.
Nadella, his influence coming in hot.
Well, as far as I can tell, Deep Blue was named at least 1 year before Satya Nadella joined the board because I typed Starbucks Tech Talks, into YouTube and stuff, and a little bit of industry gossip. All the beautiful nerds that we are that work in tech, we go to conferences and then we brag about what we're building. and we don't check with the higher ups always about what we talk about. So there's going to be some like back-end developer really proud of some ETL data pipeline that he built, giving a talk that got recorded as a tech talk that shows a slide of the machine learning infrastructure that Starbucks has. Guess who has a picture of that slide? This girl.
Nice.
AI FYI.
Yeah. So nothing secret. I'm sure it's all on YouTube. But they started building a machine learning platform, and I'm going to explain what that is for a second. So a lot of large enterprises have built what they call a machine learning platform, which is essentially an application or a selection of applications that are used internally that pass data between all these services that are necessary in order to make the AI work. And I actually saw a program manager at Starbucks have a slide at a tech talk where they showed like a whole bunch of gray boxes that were really big and one little small box in the middle of the slide that was the actual ML code. And around it was the data warehouse to store all the sensor data, the import and export services to move the data around, the thing to execute training jobs, so on and so forth, technical details.
The
But
infrastructure code just to have these things running somewhere on some cloud computer. Yeah.
so Starbucks has their own machine learning platform, and they started talking about it loosely in public around 2016, 2017. And in 2020, they actually made their own blog post about it on the Starbucks corporate blog. We can link that in the show notes so people can look at it. And I screenshotted some slides from a talk somebody gave on how they use some of the things they do with their Deep Brew mind. So, for example, they can predict your behavior when you're ordering via their app incredibly well. When you are using that mobile app, I don't know if you saw this, Joe, but they actually recommend sometimes like what drinks and they customize the promotions to you.
Mm-hmm.
They can really accurately, as far as I can tell, predict the next 4 drinks that you're going to order.
Wow.
Wow.
If I'm reading this slide correctly. Yeah.
I wonder if that just consumes their previous behavior or even other factors like, I don't know, where they live, the weather.
So one of the applications that they've done with Deep Brew is they actually use AI to determine the ideal location of Starbucks stores.
Mm-hmm.
They put in a whole bunch of data about all these different neighborhoods, cities, etc., and then they'll find the most profitable locations to place Starbucks. Which is how you might end up with 2 Starbucks in the same intersection in a crowded place because they'll have the data showing that like there'll be so many people wanting coffee that they could just have 2 Starbucks across the street from each other, each selling enough coffee to make it profitable.
Yeah, I have seen that and kind of wondered.
They also have huge supply chain complications. Like Starbucks makes a lot of their own ingredients, some of their own syrups, some of their own. Obviously, they roast the coffee in these big central things, and getting it all to the 36,000 stores. The stores don't have infinite storage room, right? They have to predict what's going to be ordered at that store and then send the right things to the right facilities at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
They're powering a lot of that with AI.
Yeah, and you know
So
that I'm going to be cranky if I don't get my PSL on time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a really interesting use case. All the supply chain management, they've done a lot of predictive analytics with AI on it. They run automated A/B testing on the mobile app with their machine learning platform to try and test how they can change your behavior. I mean, they talk about it in their slides. They try to use predictive AI in their digital menu board, as well as the digital board on drive-through to upsell and cross-sell you specifically, more coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like they can customize the menu, the digital menu board for every location based on what's trending at that location to try and increase the transaction size, basically. This is like, they haven't said this, but this is me guessing. Like their goal is to get you just come in more often. And every time you make a purchase, make that purchase a larger dollar amount.
I wonder if there's a connection to the like customer's mobile phone that when you like drive up to the store, the order board or the menu changes
that'd be
for
so
you
cool.
specifically, not just tailored to like anyone who visits that store.
I haven't found evidence of them doing that yet, but a lot of their talk track is about personalization. So how do
Mhm.
they treat every individual customer as an individual?
Mhm.
And they're doing it not because they hot take. Starbucks does not care about how you are actually doing. Starbucks cares about their shareholders.
Mm.
They want you to spend more money at Starbucks. And they can do that by selling you more coffee, talking you into buying more coffee.
I had actually read, and sorry if this buries one of your points, Andy, but uh, so a better customer experience is going to lead to more money coming in. And I read one of the ways they use AI to provide a better customer experience is actually ordering how the order of which they make the drinks that have been incoming from customer orders. And that is all in an effort to make sure you get your drink like hot and ready at the time you pick it up, which is hard to do when you have so many orders coming in at once. It'd be hard for an individual to do that.
Um, they talk about their AI platform and AI tools as a co-pilot a lot. Co-pilot is a term used in the tech industry when you have an assistive AI do some work along with a human.
There's
And
also a
they are,
product called Copilot by GitHub, which is what developers use to have a machine write code for them while they're creating their code.
Mm-hmm. But then a human goes in and basically says, is this right or not? Do I accept it or reject it?
Hopefully, they should be.
Yeah, hopefully.
uh,
Great point.
so you guys ready for me to go full tinfoil hat and give you
Yes.
my?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Every article where Starbucks talks about this, they go out of their way to say, we're not looking to replace people with AI. Methinks she doth protest too much. Okay, union busting, labor hating Starbucks with a
Slang.
CEO of an AI platform on your board.
Scary times ahead.
Yeah, follow the money.
There's already robots that make coffees. I have bought coffee from them at the SFO airport. There's a robot you can go up to, and all it can make is like 4 drinks, and it takes longer than a person right now, but that is gonna change. It's gonna get better.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
The robot also is intentionally very cute. Like it waves at you. And
mhm, it's really
one
cute.
side note, I once watched a little girl go up to that at the SFO airport and looked absolutely terrified.
It's cute. So, listen, what I think is going to happen is that I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of years, Starbucks puts some stores out that are all robot and automated just to test and see if us, the consumer, really wants to engage with a person. There's this complicated thing happening where like social media and phones are breaking all of our brains, making us terrified of human connection. Late stage capitalism is isolating people from the very communities they live in. And millennials started this with being too scared to pick up the phone and call anybody, but like people kind of avoid people. If you're the sort of human being who has not gone to a grocery store in person in ages and gets all your uh, groceries delivered through Instacart and you don't even talk to the shopper, be for real with yourself. Are you going to favor going to a Starbucks where you don't have to talk to anyone? You might.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the biggest thorn in Starbucks' side last year was human beings asking for living compensation. Make no mistake, this company that's worth trillions of dollars, that does billions of dollars of revenue a year, does not 20% of, no, over 46% of their stock is owned by institutional investors. Okay. What that means is Starbucks is beholden to their stock price. The stock price only goes up if their profits continue to go up and to the right. At a certain point, they can only underpay farmers and baristas and everyone in the middle so much. They're going to hit a stopping point, and then they're going to try to figure out how to cut out humans.
Mm-hmm.
That's my conspiracy theory. absolutely there is some group at Starbucks. I don't even think it's that much of a conspiracy theory, already exploring completely digital robot barista experiences. Um, and people vote with their dollar. It could do really well, it could do really poorly. Depends on whether you value your local Starbucks. Starbucks leadership teams will actually be on conferences and they'll be on YouTube saying like, oh, Starbucks is one of the last third places left in the nation. People really value Starbucks as a place to connect in the community. And I hope that's true, but we shall see.
It is like Amazon has done this, right? Like they open their brick and mortar stores and it's fully automated. So you just walk in and there's a camera tracking you and all the things you pick up and you just walk out. Um, I haven't really checked. I'm curious how that has gone because I went into one of those stores. I'm like, I don't really like being here for some reason. I don't know why, because it's not like I interact with store clerks when I go to the grocery store, but it felt a little like dystopian. It was like quiet. I was the only one in the store because it was like
Hmm.
it's a novel thing. There's not a lot of people there, so I just like walked in and I was like the only one in the store, and it was so weird. And I was like, I can't come back in here. This is too much for me. Um, but 50 years from now, who knows? Like I could totally imagine everyone's used to that, and it's like I'm just gonna go into this. All the stores are automated. You just walk in, get whatever you need, come out. Like so.
For me, I I think I am someone who would kind of like this experience,
Hmm.
this like touchless experience, or like not interacting with people. But I know that these experiences are being put out by these large companies that maybe don't care about the like health of humanity, um, like Starbucks or Amazon allegedly. And so that would keep me away from those. Like I went into a similar store, Kieran, and like I also felt weird about it, but only because I knew it was an Amazon store, but not
Mm.
necessarily the actual experience itself.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like even if I go to McDonald's and they have like those screens to order and there's no line there and then there's a line to order, I'll actually go stand in the line because I just don't like ordering on those screens. I
Oh,
don't
I
know why.
like it.
Yeah, it's something. Um, hmm.
And if you've been in a McDonald's recently, McDonald's is trying to get you to do your ordering in front of a computer, and just the last little bit is a human being. Um,
Yeah.
I'm of two minds. One part of me is like, the more technological unemployment, aka people being put out of work by AI, the better. Because if we make human labor valueless, then nobody has to labor. This is the Star Trek post scarcity. We all just go up to our replicator, say, one iced frappuccino, please.
Hmm.
It appears, and then we go do whatever the heck we want. So that sounds great. But generally speaking, when new technology comes out, all the reward of it is reaped by the few, the wealthy, the powerful.
Yep.
I don't see the CEO of Microsoft, who's a board member on Starbucks, volunteering not to be a billionaire anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so it could go either way. I think it is a gray zone for me. Um, I wouldn't mind robots doing all the service work as long as I had lots of opportunity to interact with other human beings. Right now, I have to labor for a living. I have a day job that is often me being home alone in front of a screen. My interactions with other people can be limited at times. Right now, I'm luckily visiting my brother and sister in law because my brother has a home office that I get to use for this. But if all the work gets replaced, all the service work gets replaced by robots, I really want to have an opportunity to just meet random people.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Even if it's just a, hi, good day, can I have a coffee? It's a meaningful transaction to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I particularly love like third spaces too. Actually, one of my gripes about San Francisco, surprisingly, is that it has very few coffee shops you can just hang out in as compared to other cities I've been to, particularly internationally. But I think that's also not really profitable, just to have people hanging out. and not like consuming and leaving. So it's unfortunate.
And because everything's ruled by profits, you can't just do what's right for the people. You have to do what's right for the shareholder.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I learned something interesting I wanted to share. If you were shocked that Starbucks is low key an AI or tech company, you may be shocked that it's also low key a bank. So their rewards program, all those folks who are paying through the app, you can actually put money into the app, and you have to use that to make payments through it. And you can only put it in at increments that start at $25 or above, and you can't get that money back out. You can't turn it back into cash. And so I think I read in 2023, at one point, the whole program held $1.8 billion of money just sitting in there, which
They're definitely investing that.
yeah, they're probably making interest on it. And like, that's what
And
banks do, which I was like,
I was talking about this episode with my sister-in-law last night, and she linked me an article. They actually, there might be a class action lawsuit that $25 minimum or something. You can change it, but they make it very hard in the app. And the drinks are priced so that you always have to top up with more money. Like the pricing and the increments are such that you always have extra cash in your Starbucks account.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's because they're making interest off of $1 billion of your money sitting around.
Yeah.
Crazy.
A coffee chain.
Yeah.
What a world we live in.
So something I did want to maybe like less of the doom and gloom of AI and Starbucks and generally coffee, but something that we talked about earlier of like flavor profiles and digitizing flavor profiles. I could imagine once we're able to do that effectively and in a way that people understand, that you could actually go and order coffee that's like peach coffee. And it's like, it just tastes like peaches. Like the way that we could change the flavors of the coffee and be so precise in like individual beans that have like different flavors, even coming from the same plant. That could be a really cool future to just have like, here's all the different flavors that we have. And it's not just like some random like South American roast that has hints of this and that. It's like, no, this is like jasmine coffee and it like tastes like jasmine flower.
And I came across an article. There's a huge beer manufacturer in Northern Europe called Carlsberg, and they actually developed an algorithm to predict the outcoming beer from mixing different strains of hops. So they could like look at the genetics and the flavor profiles of the hops going in, and then predict before they did it what the beer was going to taste like.
Wow.
So they're wasting less, making better beer.
Yeah. So yeah, it gets into, I guess, like genetic modification, which no doubt has AI involved in it.
Yeah. Anyway, our goal was to only talk about Starbucks and AI for 30 minutes, and here we are at an hour. Who wants to do an outro? I think people are sick of listening to us talk about coffee.
I'll go for it.
Take it off.
Yeah. Thank you, folks. We are trying to shorten our episodes, but we get so excited, and there's so many like tangents and crossover into other topics. Yeah, that's it for this episode. We really appreciate you listening. Please like, subscribe, and share us. We can be found on all different podcast platforms. So please go and rate us and give us stars where you can. And stay tuned for more fun and interesting episodes on how AI works. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
And send us an email at aifyipod@gmail.com if you want to request things, or leave comments on all the socials where we're listening so that we can make sure that this is interesting for you all.
Definitely. Have a great one. See ya.
Bye.
See ya.